So I'm going to get started on the pommel right now, and I got this piece of scrap steel that I've got, and looks to be about 1.5 inches in diameter. So I'm going to try sort of dressing this and kind of just giving a semicircle shape to it, and we'll see how that goes, and then I'll cut it down and do some more shaping. So. Okay, well, I got all the way through. So I tried to flatten out the base there as much as I could, but my grinder's only 0.5 horsepower, so it didn't have enough oomph to do it. It kept binding up and dying on me, so I figured I'd just give it a shot. So our hole is not exactly center, but them's the breaks. Okay, so you can see the particular grind lines from going on it that way. You should be able to make out kind of a dip right there, a cut in. There's less material there. So now we're going to go back onto the round wheel, and then we'll smooth that back out. And that's kind of going back and forth between that is kind of how I'm thinning down the pommel and giving it that the kind of taper that I'm looking for. So it's a little bit tedious, but it is working. Okay, so I got some mahogany wood here for the grip. This was specifically requested for by the customer. And I got my drill press on the table, and I kind of got it jury-rigged up in the vise here to try to get a straight hole through it. Got my long drill bit here, so the goal here is to get the one hole all the way through the wood, so that I can kind of burn in the rest of it. So we'll see how it goes. Alright, so you can see we're way off center, but I mean, we made it through. Okay, so let's see how this looks with the guard on there. So I did kind of the double taper, like I like to do on my Bowie knives that I take from kind of historic longsword, so it's thinner in the bottom portion than the top portion. So that's what I was trying to do here. It's pretty rough because it's just with the angle grinder, of course. But let's get a good feel. I like that. I'm happy with that. I didn't want this grip to be too thick, so nice and thin. That makes it very wieldable. So I'm happy with this. So we're going to lay off the angle grinder for now. So here's what our pommel's looking like. And I think I mentioned that this is longer than what I ultimately want it to be. I'm planning on cutting it off right about there. So the pommel might actually be pretty good. So what I'd like to do now is we'll draw out the rest of our tang here, and I've kind of got that. I've got that marked there. So we'll thin that down. We got to get it through our hole in the pommel there. So we'll try doing some hot fitting on that before I lose all my daylight today. That's actually working pretty good. You can see it kind of peeling back the tang there. It's getting a little bent up because of the heat, but that's all right. Okay, so I got the tang of the sword in the vise here, and my oxygen map torch set up here. So I'm going to try using this to heat up the tang, and then try to get the pommel on the rest of the way. So that's about where we're at. I've got it marked right there where I need to be. So I basically just need the end of the tang to come through the top of the pommel. So. So you can see the little curls there. That's how far we got with that first tap. Okay, so we're looking pretty good there. A little bit of a bend. See if I can straighten that out. So I think I'll give it a go one more time. Because the problem here is, of course, we have a a thin square going through a round hole. So I want to make sure I got enough material going through this thing that I'm able to peen it over properly, which I think is going to be kind of tough, but I got to give it a shot. Well, the important thing is we got the tang through, so that's good. And I think that if I get the tang hot, I'll be able to peen it over. And I think that'll work out good, so let's see how it works with the handle. I don't have a front or back kind of defined yet of how I want this to fit up, so I'll probably figure that out. The handle's got a little bit more of an indent right here, so I kind of envision that as the front. And so there's our pommel. So actually a pretty good, pretty close fit. I'll probably get this tang hot in the actual forge itself and really get it on there real close to being a good fit. Just a little bit more work to do on the pommel here. I'll have to kind of trim down these edges where they stick out, but overall it's got a good feel. I'm happy with the way this is shaping up, so far so good. Okay, so I got the sword about ready for heat treatment now. So first thing I'm going to do is normalize it. I'd like to do that 3 times. And so I've drilled a little hole in the tang here, and I put a piece of wire on there with a rope so that I can actually just suspend it and let it cool naturally like that without any sort of exterior pressure, because if I set it on the anvil or something like that, I'd be worried about it drooping because it would be hanging off. So I don't have anything big enough metal to set it on, so we're going to try this hanging method. And then for quenching, I've got this big ammo can. This held a 120 millimeter mortar or something like that. So when I bought this, it had a big plastic bit in the bottom that was for holding whatever sort of ground that was in there. And so the only way, it's got a spring clip in the very bottom that held that in there, so I couldn't just pull that out. So what I ended up having to do was melt out that plastic. So this is some of that plastic remains. So kind of like being a kid again, burning an army men. So I don't know what sort of bad chemicals and stuff were in there. So I wouldn't recommend it. But this is the best thing, the cheapest thing that I could find for quenching swords. So this should, yeah, this will be more than enough. So as but just like with everything else with this build, a lot of firsts, so we'll see how it goes. Alright, we're starting to get some, starting to warp a bit, so I'm going to have to put it in the 2x4s and try to straighten out again before I quench it. Alright, so we're going to go for the quench. I let it get a little too hot. Took shorter than I remember, so we're looking for like a red heat. Right now it's at an orange, so I'm just going to let it kind of cool down a bit. Hopefully this will let it get a little bit more uniform. It's kind of a soak too as well. Let it soak at temperature for a few minutes. Depending on the steel, it's good to do that for about 5 minutes. It's hard for me to do in the charcoal forge, but this is going to do it right here. So once this quenches, I'm going to go right over to the 2x4s and clamp it up, just in case it warps, which I have a feeling that it will. Okay, I got it clamped up. I feel good about the hardness. It looked like it got, it looked good as far as the scale coming off. There was a little bit of a warp at the end, so we'll see if this does it. I might have to try it again. All right, well, amazingly, that seemed to have worked. So yeah, I'm happy with that. You can see how all the scale kind of explodes off of there when you quench it, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to go through and kind of clean off the rest of the scale, either with a wire brush or the wire wheel, and then we're going to, we got to temper it. Okay, so I went over this with the wire wheel, and then a couple passes on the 60 grit belt on the grinder here, just to give me a chance to see it. So I've got my MAP oxygen torch here. I'm going to use this to try to temper it. So we're of course going for the kind of straw brown color. Blue is bad. I'm sure there's going to get some of that in there. But I'd rather have it be too soft than too hard. Better for it to be a little too soft than for the sword to break under use. So we've already got the straw color there in the center, so that's good. Oh, got a little blue at the tip there. Goes from straw to blue real fast. So watch that area there. It's kind of like you see it go brown, then you take the heat off, and it gets to about brown at the edge at that point. You can see how fast that color went, so I got a little too soft at the edge. I want to soften up the tang here. Got a few spots that got a little too blue, but overall. Alright, here's another angle of the sword. We got a lot of blue, which is kind of, to be honest, that's what I expected, because this torch is very difficult to just get it right. So you can see right in here, this is probably the best that I did, you know, where it's blue at the spine at the very concentrated point, then it spreads out into that brown. So right there at the edge, you know, it's so much thinner that it spreads so easily. But you know, my main fear is just having the sword break. As long as it doesn't break, I'm happy with it. So you can see we got a couple of spots that are extra soft, but that's only by the spine. So I think at the edge will be okay. And the truth is, this is about probably as good as I can do with the technology that I have at my disposal. So I guess we'll see in the cut test. And here's a look at the other side. There you go. So that's, this in here is kind of what I was trying for. That is where it got too soft. So you can see the purple is okay, or purple down at the edges, that's fine. So it's kind of a fine line between like, oh, is that, you know, still too hard? But I think enough of the brown bled over. And then, you know, purple is acceptable. This kind of blue, this hot blue, is really not what I wanted. But with it being at the point, you know, that's kind of the center of percussion. That's where the most, still hot. That's kind of where the most risk of damage is at. So, you know, overall, I think it's going to be okay. So during antiquity, sword tempering would have been done, you know, in the forge itself, and they would have watched the colors the same way. I just felt I had more control doing it this way. Now, in some of the Viking sagas, there's, you know, in the poetry and stuff like that, it's described as like, you know, the clamor of blue swords and stuff like that, which when I first read it, I wasn't sure what the heck that meant. There's a possibility that they left the kind of heat treatment colors on the sword. So, I mean, if you were an expert swordsmith, you know, a master bladesmith at that time, and you had a whole sword that you had tempered blue, right? I mean, see, mine's all kind of blotchy and stuff like that, and I'm going to polish it out. You know, we're going to do our final grind and all that's going to go away, so I'm not really too worried about it. But I mean, if you think about it, if you're a bladesmith and you were able to get this entire blade, you know, that perfect blue or that perfect straw, that would be a mark of your skill as a craftsman. That would be a mark of the heat treatment of the sword. It would be proof that the sword was properly heat treated. There's a possibility that they left that on there, and that's why we see that in the poetry. Also with Anglo-Saxon poetry, there's a word, brug, I think it is, B-R-U-G-H, which was translated as bright in a lot of the literature, so like bright swords, you know, gleaming in the sun, that type of thing. But there's a possibility, or there's a scholarly article that I read that that word might mean brown, and then, you know, people translating those texts would say, yeah, well, brown swords doesn't make any sense. But you know, that straw color, that could be described as brown, you know, especially in a time when they didn't have all these different words for everything. So again, if you had a brown sword, that would actually mean that it was properly heat treated. Okay, so I did a little bit of final grinding on the pommel just to try to neaten everything up and get rid of the 36 grit lines. I just don't feel confident in my ability to try to get this thing pristine as far as all different grind lines and all that. I got a couple hammer marks there, maybe I'll try to take those out. What I'm going to try to do is just get this thing hot and see if I can get this thing orange hot and allow that to kind of take out some of the grind lines, and then I'll use the wire wheel just to polish it down. You know, just to get the fire scale off and all that, but I want to see if that helps make it look a little bit more even. Okay, so that's what I was looking for there. So was that orange heat like that. The idea is that the you know, as when scale forms, it's that outer layer of the steel basically falling off. So hopefully this will give us a nice uniform look, and there won't be any heavy grind or hammer marks in there. So when that fully cools, I'll see if I can polish it up on the wire wheel a bit. Okay, so here's what the pommel looks like after it's cooled down. I tried brushing off that scale as it was forming, so we'll take it over to the wire wheel. And then I also got the guard hot and dunked it in my oil, not to an orange heat. I tried to keep it even under a red heat, but that way we just kind of get this kind of black oxide layer on there. So, you know, overall with the guard just in and of itself, I'm actually pretty happy with it. Kind of looks like a tentacle creature from like a you know, Cthulhu mythos, kind of a Lovecraftian monster. It's very kind of got a forward aggressiveness to it, which is kind of interesting while still being sort of a random tentacliness. So this is what the customer was looking for, was like a three-pronged knuckle guard with these coming out the top here. So not an original idea on my part, but I'm happy with the way this came out. So let's get this pommel cleaned up, see how that looks. Okay, so there's what it looks like after being cleaned up with the wire wheels. But I'm actually pretty proud of that for my first attempt doing a pommel like this. So alrighty, here's how the sword's looking. I've got the handle fitted on there, and I made some little metal shims to just snug up the guard and the handle. I'm gonna epoxy it in when it all comes down to it, but feels real good. Got a good pommel fit on there right now, and so that of course will get peened over at the very end, and then I'll you know, do the final sand on the handle. And then the blade itself, I've got to 80 grit. Got a 120 grit belt on there right now, so I'm going to start doing some of the final polishing on this. So I worked on the edge profile, basically 120, and then the Trizac belt. just to clean this up, shine it up a bit. Look, it's not gonna be perfect as far as the getting the center line in and the some of the forge marks and stuff like that. All that's going to be left in there. This is what we're looking at right now. And then in spots, especially right in here, we're fairly thin. Like I basically have an edge. And in other places, I'm still kind of thick. So we're going to have to go in and do a secondary edge bevel. I think I'll do that with the 120 grit. So I'm going to do that right now, but I just wanted to bring this outside into the daylight. Sun's going down, starting to lose our light, but I just wanted to show you where we're at right now. I'll work on the edge, and I'll probably show you this in the daylight of tomorrow. Okay, so I've got the blade polished and sharpened. Then I put a gaff tape on the blade, which is a tape that we use in filmmaking. It doesn't leave a sticky residue, so I like to use that for taping up blades. So just the same kind of idea as painter's tape, but I'm going to kind of affix the guard in a two-part stage here. So it's got a bit of slop to it, so I've made some metal shims. They're going to go in here. They're basically just small metal wedges. And they're basically just going to fit in like this. Taking a little square-faced hammer. So that way this doesn't move around. And I'm gonna put a bunch of epoxy in here. And then we're going to slide that down onto there. And as best I can, snug this up to the guard. And so this is basically just a straightness check to see that it'll work. Once the glue on this end has set, I'm going to, we got a pretty narrow hole here, so I'll try to get as much epoxy into the handle as possible. And then once this is set, I will put the pommel on, and then I'll peen over the tang, and that'll really just That'll be the final kind of snug up. I got my epoxy mixed up, so we're just gonna try to get it down in this handle as much as possible. We got it running out the tang now, so that's good. Just going to go ahead and see if I can seat the handle here. It's actually better than even the test fit, so that's good. Got to clean up my I have to clean up my hammer and all that. But I do need to make sure. Yeah, see, everything looks straight and in line. So awesome! Damn, that went better than expected. So got a little bit of glue on the guard here. We've got to clean that off. But sweet. Okay, so I've got the tang on, or I've got the pommel on here. And I put some metal shims in there as well to keep this from rotating. So this is solid, so it's just a little too long, so we're going to cut it off. We're going to cut it off with the angle grinder, and then I'll peen it over. Okay, so here's a look at how the peen turned out. Got a little bit of heat discoloration from the torch. I did some cleaning up with the wire wheel, and I'll probably do a little bit more just to get that a little bit more of a consistent color. But I'm gonna go through now and clean up all the you know, the glue spots, and then this is just like a 60 grit sanding, so I'll sand this down to 400 grit or whatever my finest sandpaper is, and then I'll put a coat of stain on it. Well, hope you guys enjoyed watching the cutting test as much as I had actually doing the cuts. I was trying to do something a little bit different and kind of utilize the two-edged nature of the longsword and kind of how these are best used in combat. So with such a long blade, you know, 33 inches as specified, having the longer handle is very helpful for getting the leverage. So if you noticed the way that I designed this pommel, I wanted to be able to hold onto it like that, so my hand's at the very end, and you can even fight with it kind of cradled in the palm of your hand if you're doing more point work like this. It does aid in the thrust and all that, and you can kind of use the pommel to drive the blade, so that way you're leveraging it. You're basically pushing with both hands to make a cut. That's why you're able to use this false edge, you know, and kind of do that double cut like I did on the watermelon. So, and from my understanding, it's from looking at the treatises and the people who have kind of done breakdowns of those, it's more that kind of false edge cut is more useful when you're in like a parry position. You've intercepted someone else's blade, and instead of having to rechamber and make make your riposte, from here you can just bring it around and cut them. So it's very quick when when executed properly. So if you look at the Meyer longsword treatises, that's kind of how they are fighting with it. It was fun to be able to try that. This is my first time doing any sort of cut test with an actual sharp sword. All my sword fighting experience and experience with longsword fighting has been through stage combat, fight choreography for films and such like that. So it was real fun to do these tests, and especially with a sword that I made. So the guard is interesting. You know, this is again the customer's request. So wanted this kind of knuckle guard, but something that didn't get in the way, and I was able to perform all the moves without an issue. These kind of would protect against another sword that came in, so it performs the duty of a cross guard. And again, I get full range of motion. So a neat design. Something I wouldn't have come up with on my own and never would have thought of to make on my own. So it was nice to be able to kind of do this. So, and I think the handle looks nice. That mahogany turned out really well. Nice thin grip, so it's very comfortable, nimble and handy in the hand, and it's light enough that at least I could wield it with one hand if need be. So it's a little bit forward heavy, but yeah, so somewhere right in there. So with the way that the guard is and the pommel, that really goes a long way in kind of helping to balance it out. But yeah, thrust good, cut's good. So certainly not perfect, but I'm really happy with the way this one came out. It was a fun build, very challenging build for me, but I'm really glad that I was able to do it, and hopefully the customer enjoys it. All right, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and if you want your own custom knife or sword, check out the Etsy web store. There's going to be links in the description box below for all that. So again, thanks for watching, and until next time, be more Viking.